Welcome back to At Home Hat Making 101, and today we're going to be doing some brims and shellacking. It's going to be probably a shorter video than last time. Thank you guys so much. I wasn't aware that this was going to be so popular. Really glad it is, and thanks for bearing with me. It's been a couple months of health issues, so that's why we're taking a little while to make this video and why it's probably going to be a little bit shorter. I'm hoping this answers a couple more of your questions, and keep the questions coming. I love them. In the future, we're going to be doing newsboy caps and a little bit with buckram, but today is just going to be the brims and talking about bowler hats, my absolute favorite, and shellacking. So let's get started. Okay, so today we're going to be working on our brim and stiffening. I'm not going to be going over doing the millinery wire today, but we're going to be flattening our brim nicely, and we're going to be doing some stiffening. So this part requires lots and lots and lots of wet. This fabric that I'm actually using right now is a velour, and velour easily burns. It's actually something that you can actually burn pretty designs into. So we have to be extra careful to not crisp it, and that noise that you hear in the background is my iron going. It's an induction cooker, and the iron is cast iron. This is nice and wet. And I gotta make sure that gets nice and hot to go through my damp wash rag and the damp brim. Now if I wet this enough, I can go over it really quick just to get it flatter. And again, I have to be super careful not to burn it. See that nice steam coming up? I already see the steam starting to go away, so you can see it's already started to get nice and flat, but I can actually feel that we've got a little bit of too dry there, so I gotta add more. This is not a beginner fabric by any stretch of the imagination, because it's very pricey. But this is the same technique that you would be using with any of the other fabrics like the wool. This is fun. Getting dirty again. But I would definitely wait to play with this until you've gotten pretty good. This is one of my hat orders. So I get to show you guys what I do while I'm making a hat order. A lot flatter. Your regular iron, you can do this on. Like I said before, you have to keep it nice and wet so you don't actually burn the fabric. So your iron's going to have to be turned up really high. I know you'll want to probably turn the steam on, but believe it or not, that won't help. Hey, we just had a power fluctuation. Let's just pause you. That was fun. You'll be wanting to, use the steam and everything like that, but it actually won't help as much as you think. You want the fabric itself to be wet and have the steam coming from there. See how that's getting nice and flat. And this thing is very, very, very hot. These guys get a lot hotter than your regular clothing irons. But a regular iron will do just fine, as long as you don't mind probably ruining the iron. Especially if you try and flatten anything or iron anything after the shellac, it'll get nice and sticky and gross. So might want to use an older iron or buy a newer iron and then use the older one as a replacement. So here we go. You can see how nice and flat that is. It looks really good. I'm going to be trimming this just to make it more round, but we want to try and keep this as big as possible. It's an Inquisition hat. I love it. It's super fun to make. They wanted the nice velvety texture. Later on, I'm actually going to come in really close to here and just crisp this off really tight. But today we're just showing you a little bit of the beginning stuff. So again, the closer you get into here, the damper you have to get it. Like, if you think this is too wet when you go to iron it, there's no such thing. As like I said, you don't want to crisp the fabric at all. And this is just, this would fry. So you just keep it nice and damp each time you go over it. Wet, 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 iron, wet, iron, wet. Never ever do this dry. So there we go. We'll move on to shellacking. Okay, so hopefully you can hear me. I got the whole Darth Vader vibe going on. This is the perfect type of respirator. You need actually a good one for aerosolized products. If you just talk to the guys at Home Depot or Lowe's, they'll let you know which type you need to get. Please always wear your respirator. This is not stuff you want to be breathing in. Again, hopefully you guys can hear me okay. I'm going to be talking throughout this whole thing, and Luke, I'm not your father. So here we go. So for this one, just going to be spraying. Just watch careful, there's a lot of stuff that comes up, you can see. So just try to spray it and keep it nice and even. This is the reason why I like this spray, because we actually get it on here pretty even. So after you get a nice good coat, this is a clean brush. And you can see it just homogenates into the fabric, soaks into the fabric really, really good. If I didn't do this, you can see in here, I'm not sure if you can, you see all that little dew? It would actually dry like that and you'd get white staining otherwise. So we want to eliminate that with the paintbrush and get it to soak in really good. You got to do this a little quick if you're going to do 2 coats, which I'm going to do. So that's my first coat. This is the second coat. It'll start to dry and it'll get sticky. It's not what you want to do. So I also have my hat shaper out here to act as the hat block to help this keep and retain its shape. But I always put plastic cling film on top of it just so it won't actually stick or ruin my hat blocks. So, as you also notice, I have gloves on because this is not stuff you want. It doesn't not going to hurt your hands or anything like that, but it is kind of hard to wash off. So. Keep and retain this. If I wanted to make this semi-waterproof, well, not waterproof, wrong words, water resistant, I could spray the outside with 1 or 2 coats, and then the sanding that I showed you will actually bring it back to being nice and soft. You don't want to overspray the outside because you'll actually lose that really nice soft not sheen, but softness that you have on the outside, and it'll be kind of hard to the touch. So for this one, I'm actually going to dip. So you get your paintbrush down in there. This is a lot more time consuming, but it actually soaks in pretty good. You don't want to oversaturate your brush. So try and get as much off there as you can. And just quick, broad strokes. Do small sections at a time. This is the technique that I use for my top hats. Apparently my cameraman's dying. This is why we wear respirators. I'm only going to do a little bit more on this because again we'll be here forever. So I'm also going to do it to the outside of this brim, and this is going to be several days of several coats of this. I let it dry overnight because I want a lot of stiffness to this brim. We want it to stick out perfectly and nice and strong and hold up of its own weight. Again, I'm being really careful to not oversaturate this. This is definitely not what I want to do. So this one's actually going to be getting only one coat today, because this is the velour, and if it soaks through into the other side of it, it's going to get really manky and gross. So I'm going to keep going at this, but you're not going to see any of it, and we're going to go back inside. So, since we are doing shellacking today, I wanted to talk about my absolute favorite hat. This is a bowler hat, and to me it's the sexiest, most wonderful hat, mainly because of that. That requires a lot of shellac. And as you saw in the beginning, this is a vintage / Victorian style bowler hat. That's where it has the ventilation. This is actually a Victorian style with a Western brim, which is actually a lot larger on the bowler hats. The bowler hats history is my favorite just because how that came about. The fact that it was originally supposed to be a helmet. Edward Coke, he was a British soldier, actually commissioned Lock & Co., Thomas and William Bowler, to make him a hat for his groundskeepers to keep them from basically beating themselves on branches, etc. And that's why this ended up being so hard. Later on in its history, they used to actually use these as offensive and defensive weapons, believe it or not. This is, again, why it's my favorite hat. They would sew sharpened pennies into the brim, but also if somebody were to come at you with a knife, you could hit them in the head with it. You could actually, in Barjitsu, there's a move that they teach you if somebody's, stabbing at you, you actually let them stab your hat and do like a twisting move and all that stuff. So it's just, I love this hat so much. I love making them. And I mean, how could you not love a hat that you can actually like hit somebody in the head and do some damage for? This, like I said, requires the most amount of shellac of any of the hats that I make. Over here I have a couple of my beaver fur style top hats. They require a good amount as well. They're not as hard, but they still are pretty stiff. So what would happen is I would shape this, and this is a puzzle block. It would get knocked out. I would spray it. This takes a good week for me to actually be able to do this. It has to be done in layers so it doesn't soak out into the outside and ruin the really gorgeous long nap fur here. Same thing with the bowler. I can actually slightly, not weatherproof them, but they can get weather resistant because I spray the outside as well as the inside. This has a traditional leather sweatband on there, but this is very time consuming to do. So if a bowler hat is in your future and you want it to be this hard, you need a lot of patience and a lot of shellac. I think I go through about 1.5 cans if I use the spray cans, and if I don't want to go through a whole spray can, I actually get this and dip it in with a paintbrush, as you saw before. So, stuff that we use today. The irons, of course, and the shellac. This is what happened to my iron, and the hubby was very sweet and nice and was patient with me until I bought a new one. Because when you put the shellac on, obviously it gets kind of sticky and gross. This is now relegated to the hat room, so be forewarned, if you shellac and then iron, this is what will happen. This is my cast iron. You can actually get the old-fashioned antique ones at antique shops. Make sure that they're not sprayed with spray paint or anything like that. You can heat them up on your oven. Their handles aren't wooden. This is actually a really nice find. Their handles are metal, so obviously you'd need pot holders to hold on to them, but again, you can actually find them at antique markets for pretty cheap, and you can heat them up on your oven if you want to actually do the old traditional method. And I mentioned the sizer before in the other video. It's not something that I like to use since it's a little bit more toxic than the shellac. Again, I will repeat a bazillion times until I run out of breath. Please use a respirator when you spray this. It is toxic when it is aerosolized, but it is non-toxic after it dries. You can actually do like wooden spoons, shellac wooden spoons, and you can eat with them and it's still safe. It's the reason why I like using this so much over the sizer, which is very toxic. It does dry really, really well and stiffen very, very well, but I'm not a big fan just because it's very potent. So you can get this or this. This is a lot more value for the money, but you actually have to make sure, you know, your brush is well not as saturated so you don't soak through. This is a lot easier to use. So yeah, thank you guys for joining me for today's video, and I'm going to be doing more in the future, but I'd like to reiterate, this is all stuff that you can pretty much do at home. This is not for really well-experienced hat makers. I just wanted to get people really excited about making hats and doing them at home, because I feel like this is a dying art and I would like to keep it alive as much as possible. So I'm really hoping that these videos are at least helpful and keep the questions coming. Talk to you guys later. Bye!